All right, let's just jump right in. There's this massive difference between how elite performers and, well, everyone else go about their business. And it's funny, it has nothing to do with some secret talent or a complex strategy. Nope. It's all about one simple thing: where their attention is right in that moment before they pull the trigger.
And this quote, man, it just nails it. Ask an amateur what he thinks about. He will tell you about the profit. Ask a professional, he will tell you about the mistake he is most likely to make. That one distinction, it's a total game changer. It literally changes everything.
So let's break that down, because this is the core of it all. Before a single dollar is even at risk, the amateur is already off in fantasy land, right? They're spending the money they haven't made yet. But the professional, nope. They're like a chess master, methodically thinking about how to avoid a very specific error. And that one little thing, that quiet shift in focus, that's where the entire performance gap comes from.
Now, you might think this is just some, trading guru talk, but it's not. This is actually a rock-solid psychological principle backed by a ton of research into what makes elite performers tick. It really does all boil down to where you put your attention.
So the fancy term for this is attentional focus. It comes right out of cognitive psychology. But honestly, the idea is super simple. Wherever you point your attention, that's what's going to dictate the quality of your performance. Simple as that. What you're thinking about in that moment literally shapes your results. And this is where it gets really interesting. Research shows there are basically two ways to focus, and the one that feels right is actually the wrong one. An external focus, that's when you're thinking about the money, the win, the outcome, that almost always leads to worse performance. It's crazy, right? But an internal focus, where you're locked in on the process, the how-to, the mechanics of what you're doing, that's what consistently gets you better results. And look, this isn't just theory. They've studied this stuff for real. You take athletes, right? The ones who focused on the feel of their movement, the mechanics of the shot, they did way better than the ones who just stared at the target. Or surgeons, the ones who were completely absorbed in their technique made way fewer mistakes than the ones thinking about whether the surgery would be a success. The data is just undeniable. Focus on the process, not the prize. So let's tie this all back to trading. Here's the deal. The pro's mind is right here, right now, completely absorbed in the work. The amateur, their mind is somewhere else entirely. It's in the future, daydreaming about the win. They're basically watching a movie in their head, a movie that doesn't exist yet, while the actual game is being played right in front of them. Okay, so that's the psychology. But how do you actually do this? How do professionals make this internal focus a reality? Well, the first tool is a really powerful one. It's a way to see a failure before it even has a chance to happen. It's called a premortem. It was developed by a psychologist named Gary Klein, and the whole thing hinges on this one powerful, kind of weird question. You ask yourself, okay, let's imagine it's 6 months from now. This whole thing was a total disaster, a complete failure. What happened? What went wrong? And why does this work so well? It's brilliant, actually. When you tell your brain to assume it's already failed, you give it permission to stop trying to be optimistic. You free it from having to defend the idea, and suddenly all the potential problems, all the weak spots, they just pop out with crystal clarity. It's like you're seeing a totally different landscape, when you'd be completely blind to if you were only focused on success. And you know what's cool? This is not some new age trick. We're talking about an idea that's been around for over 2,000 years. The ancient Stoics had a name for it, premeditatio malorum, which is just a fancy way of saying thinking about what could go wrong beforehand. They didn't do it to be negative, they did it to be ready for anything. All Gary Klein did was give it a modern name and a framework for business and decision-making. It's a truly timeless tool. All right, so let's get super practical with this. If you're a trader, this means before you even think about clicking that mouse, you stop and ask yourself, what's the exact way I'm probably going to screw this up? You get specific. Am I going to be tempted to move my stop? Am I going to get stubborn and add to a losing position? See, when you name the demon beforehand, you can actually build a cage for it. So the premortem is fantastic for preventing a one-off failure on a single decision. But what about those annoying mistakes that just keep happening over and over? For that, we need another tool. This is about eliminating those errors for good. It's called building a mistake taxonomy. Think of a mistake taxonomy like you're a scientist studying your own behavior. It's your personal, super detailed catalog of every single error you make. It's not some generic checklist. It's a living, breathing document where you log every time you break a rule, and you categorize it, what type of mistake was it, what was the trigger, and how often does this dang thing happen. The whole point is to know your own personal failure modes with absolute precision. And here's the step-by-step. It's a system. Number 1, after every single trading session, you log any time you didn't follow your plan. Number 2, you give that mistake a very, very specific name. We'll get to why in a sec. 3, after a while, you'll see patterns. Find the top 3 mistakes that keep showing up. 4, for each of those top 3, you design a specific way to prevent it, a system to make it harder to do. And finally, number 5, you keep tracking them until their frequency drops to 0. It's a systematic, engineering-based approach to getting better.
And that's why being specific is so critical. It's everything. Saying something like, oh, I was just emotional today, or I need more discipline, that's totally useless. It's just a vague feeling. You can't fix a feeling. But saying, on my third trade, I moved my stop loss down by 10 ticks because the thought of taking a loss felt unbearable, now we're talking. That is a specific problem, and a specific problem can be solved.
And here's the wild part. For almost everyone who actually does this work, the list doesn't get crazy long. It's not 20 mistakes. It's not even 10. It almost always boils down to just 3. 3 specific recurring errors that are causing the vast majority of the damage. And that is the holy grail right there. Imagine you have a strategy, a system that you know has a real edge. Now imagine you go in and, like a surgeon, you systematically remove your top 3 execution errors. What's left? There's only one possible outcome, one trajectory from there. Upward. And it's not the exciting, dramatic kind. It's quiet, it's consistent, it's professional. Which brings us right back to you. This is, without a doubt, the most valuable work you can do this year. Forget looking for the next hot strategy or magic indicator. It's about perfecting the execution of the strategy you already have. It's time to find your top 3. So, I'm going to leave you with a direct challenge, a question. What are your top 3 recurring mistakes? And don't give me vague answers. I mean, named with surgical precision, written down on a piece of paper, identified before you even place your next trade. Because I promise you that little list, that one act of brutal honesty, is worth more than every trading book you could read or every seminar you could attend this year.